and I've had some really good ones. So I'm going to tell you a story about 2007. Some of you were probably still in high school or middle school, unfortunately. Thanks, Bailey, for making me feel old. So anyway, so 2007 January program. We had the whole month of December to recruit, and my main mission was to get 100 people scheduled. And so we didn't quite get to 100, but we got to 90. I had a hotel rented out for my training seminar, and it was the big day. I had assistant managers ready to go, and right around a half hour before training starts, people start rolling in. I'm super excited, and I'm sitting there mixing and mingling with people, and there's about 8 people sitting around and that I'm chatting with. And before I know it, I look at the clock, and it's 15 minutes past the time I was supposed to start training. And there's only 8 people in front of me. Yeah. Damn. Thanks, Melissa, for that. Yeah. And so I was pretty devastated, as you can imagine. And so now if we fast forward to 2011, same thing. We actually only had 3 weeks to recruit because we did a recruiting class at the beginning of December. I had 3 weeks to recruit, and the first day we had, in 45 minutes early, we had my best of the best people, which one was a 10K fast start, two were like a 6K fast start, and the other ones were like 3 or 4. Anyway, we ended up having 20 people in day one, and that year, that class just blew up, and so and let me tell you what both of these led to. So 2007, I had 8 people show out of 90 whatever that were set. So what did that lead to? That led to we had an okay spring. We had an $80,000 spring. We had an okay summer, but it led to a $56,000 fall. And by the way, back in that day, we had receptionist staff and other things that we were paying for, like newspaper ads that were like $1,000 for every 2 weeks. So a $56,000 fall with my profitability model was not profitable. And so 2007, that January program from 2007 really made the rest of my year just pretty awful. It was like the worst year of my DM career, mentally, emotionally, financially, and I really, really didn't feel like I was doing great. Now, 2011, what did that lead to? Well, that led to and by the way, I don't remember all these numbers. I looked them up because I have my profit and loss statements. So yeah, shout out to Rising Stock so for having all those numbers for me. But in 2011, what did that lead to? It led to a $200,000 spring. $150,000 of that was new business, a $500,000 summer, and a $941,000 year. So what were the major differences? Well, let me tell you. So first off, I'm going to go through some of the don'ts that you definitely don't want to do if you don't want to have a 2007 like I did. And so the first don't is don't go through the motions. I know that it can get pretty repetitive at times, especially when you're doing interviews. You're saying the same thing in pre's and posts quite often. So it's easy to just go through the motions and zone out, especially when you only have 1 or 2 people in front of you. So that was one of the biggest mistakes, and one of the reasons that I had a ridiculously awful show. It was a 7% show, I think, because all I was focused on was trying to get that 100 set number. I wasn't really connecting with people. I remember reflecting back on why was my show so terrible. I remember in my interview, I was saying all the words, but I wasn't there mentally. I don't know if any of you have ever done this before, but it was, I remember vividly being in the interview because I just didn't want to be there. I just wanted to get people recruited and go do something else. And I remember asking like recruits a question and they would answer and I would have totally zoned out and I would ask them the same question over again. And I remember some recruits being like, didn't I just answer that question? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just kidding around with you, just seeing if you're paying attention. And so I was just going through the motions, and obviously people could tell. And so, a lot of times I was like, people can't tell. Like, I'm saying all the right words and everything, but they can, and obviously it shows. So even if you only have one or two people in front of you, you got to make sure that you're engaged. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that here in a little bit. So the second thing is that it's a big don't that caused my 2007 not to be great was I was doing activities because my division manager told me to versus wanting to. And that's a big difference, right? So, when you do something because you have to versus because you want to, you're obviously going to get different results. So if somebody tells me to do something, I'm going to go do it, but I did it half-heartedly. So my division manager was like, make sure to get out all your flyers. So I would just pick out places to go flyer. It wouldn't necessarily be well-researched or wouldn't be where students were at. I would just be going to hand out flyers anywhere that I could. When I was, my division manager was like, make sure to set up on campus tables. So I did, but I wasn't really like trying to get people. Like I was just standing there waiting for people to come to me. I would go visit some schools to say that I was be able to. And that was just kind of my attitude. And that was why my 2007 wasn't great and why I wasn't very profitable and why I felt, if any of you have ever listened to a Matthew Kelly talk on Vector Connect, it's one that he gives at RDC, and he talks about there's several different levels of energy, and it's been a while since I've listened to it. But one of the levels that he speaks about is the lowest level of energy, and it's when you're feeling depressed, depleted, worn out. And when you're in that state of mind, of course, nobody's going to be attracted to your business. And of course, you're not going to want to be in your business. Nobody else is going to want to work hard for you. I remember what this led to is me having a really crappy team with really crappy people. I remember having one good person. His name was Sean McGinnis, who ran a district later. But I remember us having a phone jam where we had me, Sean, and one of our reps. And I think she would make a phone call, and then she would go wash her hands, and then make a phone call, and then go wash her hands. And Sean and I are like, what is she doing? Like, she just didn't want to call anybody, so she was just trying to do something because she was our only rep basically on the team. So anyway, I know I know some of you have had fall like campaigns like that, and you're like, some of you are like, yep, that's my team right now, or that was my team this fall. And I've been there and I've done that, and that's why I wanted to make sure that never happened again. So so 2011, what did I do to make sure that I was at the highest level of energy, where I was energetic, excited, and enthusiastic about what was in front of me? I was passionate. Well, one is I was intentional. I was intentional about every single day, and single thing I did, I really actually planned. Like, I don't know if any of you have a planner, and if I were to look at it, if it would be filled out or not, like completely. But I was specifically intentional about what I was doing, and I'll give you some more specifics about what I mean by that here in a moment. So, one is I was really intentional about getting PRs from my top people and getting them in. So I was really aggressive about this. I know many of you may feel like, I've already, I remember when I was in that depressed, depleted, that lowest level of energy phase, that my excuse for myself, or what I would sell myself on, is I've already asked, my people for PRs and training. They emptied out their whole phones. I've already asked people a couple of times. In 2011, I was relentless. And I was like, hey, we're going after this big goal. We're going after $100,000 January, which we only did 80,000, but still $80,000 January was still, I was okay with it. We were one of the first offices to win the trip that year, which was to Dominican Republic. Anyway, doesn't matter. But anywho, was intentional, and I was making sure to re-ask and continue to ask my top people for PRs, because we also had a similar contest to what we do right now, which is if they had PRs in, they got credit towards their trip, towards winning the trip. So like every single time I talk to them, I'm like, hey, what friend have you spoken to? Like, hey, we got to get you to winning this trip. Like, this is like the easiest thing. All you have to do is talk with people. All you have to do is like keep talking to your friends. If they said no, keep talking to them about it. I would tell the Josh Mueller story. If you guys don't know Josh Mueller, I mean, you know who Josh Mueller is, but if you don't know Josh Mueller's story, he was recruited by his friend relentlessly over several years, and finally decided to check out the knife job that he thought was really lame, and ended up turning into his career. So anyway, so basically, I was really focused on PRs. Secondly, I was very intentional about aggressively flyering, and I was on a mission. So if you don't have a good January program, can your office do well the rest of the year? Sure, absolutely. But it's a heck of a lot easier to have your office do freaking fantastic if you start with a sprint in the very first month. So I have a couple of tips for you. Okay, so I basically have, I think, three tips that I'm going to go into major detail about how you guys can really max out your January program, so you can have more of like a Patti Breton 2011 January program versus a 2007 January program. All right, so number one, my first tip is to write out your mission statement or vision of what you want your team to look like by the end of this year, by the end of 2019. Oh, by the way, if these tips are things that you've heard before, that's probably a sign that they work and you should do them. So, but write out a mission or a vision of what you want your office to look like, what you want your team to look like by the end of 2019. Not by the end of January, not by the end of the spring, but by the end of 2019. And I'm talking about being like specific as possible, not necessarily CPO specific, but what do you want your team to look like? When you walk into your office in December of 2019, how many people are going to be at a team meeting? What is that going to look like? What is the energy going to be like? How do you feel when you're looking at your Monday reports? Like, are you proud of your team? How many people have sold over 1,000 and are on the newsletter? How many management candidates do you have? And how many just went to Olean? And just try to get how many 10K fast starters did you have over the entire year? Or how many 6K fast starters? You don't have to just focus on 10K, right? So getting as detailed as possible, because what that's going to do is that it's going to get you really excited and passionate about your vision. And then you're going to relay that $1 million a year, like, people don't really care about numbers. But what they do care about is they care about being a part of a team that they can imagine being part of. I'm not saying that you don't promote numbers. Sure, you can promote numbers, but promote what it's going to look like, right? So this is what Matlock was just talking about in 2008. I was like, hey, I remember telling my team something like, last SLC, because this was in 2008 when Matlock was talking about this team meeting that I had that I cried at. And so it was just after my 2007 year that I was depleted, depressed, like really had a really low level of energy. 2008, I turned it around, and I remember talking to my team and saying, hey, you know what? There's everybody in the nation. Like, I know a lot of people in the nation. A lot of them don't know who we are. A lot of people don't know Albuquerque office or who Patti Breton is. And I want to prove them all wrong. I actually had and this is me talking to my team, I had a district manager tell me that I would never beat them because I'm not as good as them. And I'll be damned if somebody can just be able to say that to us, because you know what? I have champions on my team, and you guys are my champions. And you know what I can see in the next 6 months? I could see our team being doubled in this room right now. We have people up in the front of the room being able to earn $1,000 paychecks, $500 paychecks every single week. I see people coming in, turning in ultimate orders, homemaker orders. I see people hitting promotions left and right. We have right now, 3 management candidates, and I only have 2 people on my staff. But in 5 months from now, I see that entire board being filled up. And I see some of you on that board. I see some of you being on that board as assistant managers, as branch managers. And it all starts right now, because here's why I want to yada, yada, yada. So anyway, like describing to people like how you see your office and what you want it to look like and how they fit in to be part of it. And there's going to be like 10% that don't care, but then other 90% is all that matters. So make sure that you have a detailed vision, you're promoting it. And it's just interesting that whatever you appreciates, whatever you promote usually happens. So every single time I would do this, and promote a vision that was super crystal clear, it would typically come alive by itself. It was crazy. All right, number 2 is to be sure to get right mentally before your interviews and any activities in your office. So be sure to get right mentally in your interviews and before any activities in your office, and write down your intentions in your planner. So what do I mean by this is, so this is how I went from having a 7% show in 2011, and also in 2011, by the way, my first couple of years as a DM, my average show was 25%. So it was not great. From 2008 until 2015, the rest of my DM career, my average show was 49%. So what was the difference? It was doing things like, 1, I would make up stories in my mind about people before I even talked to them. So I did this in interviews. I did this when I was flyering, when I was doing PR calls. So what do I mean by that? Is I would be looking at an application and I'd be like, oh, Jerry Hillman. All right, Jerry. All right, I would look over his application and be like, I could see Jerry being my next 6K fast starter. And after he becomes a 6K fast starter, he's going to be a hell of an assistant manager. He's going to be one of my branch candidates. And I would just like make up a story about each individual candidate that I would be interviewing. When I was passing out flyers, I'd be like, oh, that's my next 50K rep. I got to go get them a flyer. Ooh, this is my next branch manager candidate. Ooh, this is my next 3K fast starter. And it didn't all have to be like, huge. Oh, this is the next person that's, gives me 200 PRs. I could tell they're popular. Like in my mind, I was just making up stories about the people I was coming in contact with, because it kept me engaged and it kept me excited to make sure that I was connecting with those people to get them to show. So then it also helped that I had this vision mapped out and exactly what I wanted by the end of the year. So I could place them into those different those different roles that I was excited about. The second thing is practice being 100% focused on what's in front of you. So this definitely takes some work and takes some effort in anything, right? So whether it's vector or not, right? This is hashtag skills for life, but practice being 100% focused on what's in front of you. If you're married and you're spending time with your wife or husband, you don't want to be thinking about, work or something else. You want to be 100% engaged with them, right? Because you're spending time with them. It's the same thing with your business. So if you have a hard time really focusing on what that thing is, I'd recommend doing some practice sessions through things like Headspace. If you don't know what Headspace is, it's an app. It's like meditation. You can practice it for 5, 10, 15 minutes. It's a free app. You can upgrade though. But the other second way that it's going to allow you to, one of the second ways that you're going to be able to be 100% focused on what's in front of you is by marking your intentions for the day. So I'm not talking about results. I'm talking about your intentions. So what you can control. So you can't necessarily control how many PRs you book, but you can control how many calls you make. So my intention today during my PR blitz is to make X amount of calls, right? Or send out X amount of texts and making sure to track that. My intention today is get X amount of flyers out. My intention today is to call every single person on the team. Or call them twice, or call everybody once and then text them to make sure I could get a hold of as many people as possible. But I feel like a lot of times people will set goals, which is great, but you can't always control the results, but you can control what you do. And I know you guys already know this, but just setting those intentions in your planner and marking them off every single day makes you feel so good. And that's really what allows you to have a great January program, is those consistent efforts, those small consistent steps, not necessarily just one thing. Okay. Number 3, the last and final tip is to make sure you have an aggressive recruiting plan. So I want you to ask yourself and be real with yourself. Are you really doing everything you could? Or is it kind of like the mindset of what I had in 2007 of just good enough? Like this is good enough to get my division manager off my back. This makes, by the way, these are some of the thoughts I had in 2007, why I didn't have a great year. But I'm like, I'll set up these 3 on-campus tables so it looks like I'm working. Like it looks like I'm at least trying, right? That's not what a high-level manager, if you want to step up into this business and get to the next level, you can't be thinking like that. You got to be excited about your mission, and you got to be like hungry for recruits. So where does that hunger come from? Well, your vision. If you know exactly what you're going for, then that's great. Secondly is having no fear. Have no fear about being aggressive about this recruiting plan. So are you re-asking people for PRs? Are you asking people for PRs in every single PC? I know some of you might be scared to do that. Don't. Like, if you're asking people for PRs in every single PC, they're going to realize that you're going to keep asking them. So then they're going to think of people to bring you every PC. Matlack and I used to train at this place called Shockwave. It was their main goal, their main punchline was eliminate the threat in 3 to 5 seconds. Anyway, one of the things he did every single class, and I went there 3 times a week, every single class, at the end of the class, he asked for us to write down names and numbers of people who we think would be great in Shockwave. So every single class, I made sure to come with an idea in mind of, who I think would be great to come to Shockwave. And I recruited the most people in the year I was there. So you were, and Matlack was one of them. And so I got a free Bob. You punch him. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But are you asking people and re-asking people for PRs? Are you getting people to text through Snapchat and Instagram and social media? Like, are you asking people that on PDI, on PCs? Are you contacting your campuses and all your campuses? Like, this should be super urgent right now. Like your college campuses, you only have like 1 or 2 weeks left. Like right now, your best students or your best candidates are like they're fish in a barrel. They're like super easy to get because you know where all of them are. So you should be like thinking, holy shit, Nikes, I need to be getting on campus to get these people. So some of you might be like, oh, I can't flyer on my campus. There's so many other things you can do. Have you contacted all your clubs? Have you contacted every single, if the career services won't work with you, have you contacted the business school? Have you contacted other aspects of there's like 50 departments on a campus that you can go talk to, and I guarantee one of them is going to be willing to work with you. Have you tried to do email blasts? And if you haven't gone after this now, if it's just been kind of like oh, I'll get to it at some point, like this should be like super urgent to do right now, because this could be the difference maker between you having a okay January program to you having a great January program. The next thing aside from campus to make an aggressive recruiting plan is once college campuses are out, you can focus on high schools. High schools have another 3 weeks. You can contact, some of the DECA teachers. You can contact some of the counselors, see if you could get some posters up, do some guest lectures there. So these are all things that you could be doing to make sure that you're taking full advantage. So going back to asking for PRs from your team, like every time you ask for PRs, obviously you should be doing a promotion of what's in it for them. There's a ton of things that you can promote right now. One of the easiest being Puerto Vallarta. Like if they get 3 friends on the team, it credits what, $5,000? Is that right? So that is like the easiest promotion ever. Like, Carissa, I don't want you to miss out on this Puerto Vallarta trip. Like, dude, I know I emptied your phone, but like right now I'm looking at I pulled up on Vector Live all your PRs, and we've only gotten a hold of like a third of them. So come on, like if you sold $5,000 and you got 3 friends on the team, that would be an additional $5,000. Like you would get to go to Puerto Vallarta. I totally think you can, or whatever it might be. But I would just be promoting Puerto Vallarta like nobody's business to anybody, even if you don't think that they could sell the amount that they need to sell to get there. Like $5,000 credit towards that seems like absolutely ridiculous just to get 3 friends in. Second promotion that you could be doing to your people to talk about getting PRs in is management promotion. I'd be talking about management promotion, resume building. So if they're not excited about Puerto Vallarta, hey, in order to be able to move up and, so-and-so, I know that you're only at $1,000 in sales, but I can see you as a future manager. And one of the ways that you can prove that to myself and our division manager is by getting friends on the team. By the way, it's great resume experience too, because every single company wants to see that you're a team player and that you're willing to bring more people on. Actually, most companies not only promote within, but they also are looking for other people through those people too. So it works the same way. So it's going to be great for you and your resume as well. But if you haven't watched it, Kathy Vasquez, or whatever her new last name is, she has a YouTube video. Oh, Kristen, that's what it is. Kathy Kristen, she has a YouTube video where she's getting people to, you probably all saw it in person, but if you haven't watched it for a while, it's like an 8-minute video where she gets people to post on Snapchat, direct message people. I'd highly recommend watching that. And if you haven't done exactly that, I'd recommend that as well. So the next part about being aggressive in the recruiting plan, are you just collecting names and trainings? Is that it? Are you also asking in advanced training, PDI, PCs? In advanced training back in my day, like Nick and I, we had all sorts of like really creative things. I know Nick, one of the things Nick brought to the Rocky Mountain division was the alley-oop approach in advanced training. And people would dump out their phones on the 3rd day of training when we had 3-day training. And they would come back in advanced training and we'd be like, hey, we only got a hold of like a handful of your friends because they didn't recognize us. So we're going to have you call some of your friends. Anybody who gets, 4 people scheduled for interviews right now will get $20. And holy mackerel, did people get on the phone to make that happen? It doesn't have to be exactly that, but are you getting creative like with getting people to make some phone calls? Lastly, the 2 last things is max out your time on social media. Like, don't just be the person who's like, oh, I sent out some messages. Like, max out your social media. Like right now, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, do all of that because, when it comes to January and you're going to have either 8 people in front of you or less, or you're going to have 20 people in front of you. And you're like every single action you do right now, it might only allow you to get 1 or 2 recruits. But if you do multiple actions, let's say 7 actions a day and you get 7 recruits a day for the next several weeks, holy criminy, that's going to allow you to have a huge January program. But the last thing is every single day I make a detailed plan of where you're going, what your goals are, like your intentions, and to get help. So this is one of the biggest things that really made me have a shift, is that I got help with every part. So whether it was while I was doing PR calls, like getting people to come in the office to make their own phone calls, they weren't necessarily making PR calls, or getting people to go flyer with me, or getting people to go on campus with me. Because I also was that manager who had in my schedule, like, I'm going to go flyer at this place, and then I'd look outside, I'd be like, oh, it looks really cold, I'll do it tomorrow, it's fine. But when you have people scheduled to help with you, like, I hate disappointing like people, or like getting people signed up and telling them like, oh yeah, like last minute, like you don't need help. Like I was like, ah, crap, I gotta go because I have 3 people coming with me flyering today. And even if I didn't want to go, like I went because I got those people signed up. And it doesn't have to be your reps either. It could be some of your recruits. Like we used to offer Cutco bucks in the interview. Like, hey, I know you're not going to get started for a couple weeks. If you want to earn some Cutco bucks, we're going to be handing out flyers, or we're going to be doing X, Y, or Z. So you're welcome to come in and help build the team. We'll give you a step up on management in the future, and people will come in. You can also bribe your friends too. So anyway, so those are the 3 major tips. Is 1, make sure you know what you're shooting for by the end of 2019. 2 is get your mindset right whenever you're doing whatever you're doing on a daily basis, and make sure you know what your intentions are. And lastly, making a good aggressive recruiting plan and stick to it. So thanks. Oh, shucks. Very awesome. Thank you.
Very, very good. And thank you so much for that. I'm going to stop the